Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Git Good at OpenRCT2 Tycoon 2. In this episode I will do a feature that was requested quite often, which is how to do custom supports. Now, custom supports are a great way to make your coasters look really good, and it's really one of the few custom scenery objects that I really like to use. I don't use them quite often though, but it is, they are fun to use. Although it may be quite tricky at times. Anyway, I'll now just show you how to use these. Anyway, I will now just reuse this coaster that I made for a challenge before. I also showed this coaster in a showcase video, but I didn't feel like making a new coaster for this video, so I will just reuse this one. Anyway, the first thing I usually do is just mark the places where the original supports were. So you can see I marked them here with grass. And for the first part of the tutorial, let's do these ones that are close to the ground, because they're really easy to do. Anyway, there are several types of footers. You should paint them gray, by the way. So there's these footers that are centered on the center of the edge. Like this. I'm rotating it now. There's also footers that are really centered on the center of the tile, and there's footers that are quarter tile. Now for these low to the ground pieces, it's usually easiest to just use the centered ones. So let's just put a centered footer under all these close to the ground supports. Can actually sink them into the ground a bit. Alright. Now we want the original support here to disappear. So in these sets there is usually also a support blocker. Here it's the first item. So where we place the footer, let's just remove the original supports. And what we'll do next is well, we use the center footers, so we also need to use the centered support. I think this one is vertical full centered, that's correct. And let's paint it like that. Actually, let's use the color of the supports we already used, which is this color. It looks nice as if the flanges are the same color as the support itself. Now we'll need to disable the clearance checks, and then we can start building. So let's hold the shift button, and I build upwards one time. Now I usually always start with support with a flange. That's usually how they are mounted to a steel footer. To a concrete footer, I mean. Okay, and what we'll do next is we'll take this one next to it without a flange, and we just build upwards until we reach the track. There's probably no need to go any higher here. Okay, perfect. Well, that's the easy part. So yeah, this is how to do the supports for coaster tracks that are low to the ground. For example, we could also use those right here in this part. I typically always build my coasters above ground, by the way, even if it's just a little bit, just so I can make footers with little support pieces under them. It makes the coasters just look so much better. Alright, now for a little bit more tricky part, let's do the chain lift. Now, if you see the chain lift for a coaster, there's usually chain lift is usually connected in the middle, and then there's two let's call them legs outwards. Sometimes when there's not much space, there's usually one one support that goes downwards and one that goes more to the side, but usually they're both put to the side. Anyway, you'll need this piece, which look like this. So it's centered on the half tile of the centered on half of the tile, and I just went to a place where there was a support, and with shift I dragged it upwards until it's here under the track. We can actually remove the original support now, and all we have to do now is go next to this tile with one of these steel supports, one of these long pieces, and we just shift, we just drag it upwards, and we go to the next tile, we drag it upwards, and we go to the next tile and the next tile until we are close to the ground. Now right here, since we're only on a half of the tile, we'll need to use these quarter tile footers. Let's make it gray. It's sometimes tricky to see where actually this support is located. So if you have the what's it called, virtual floor, then it's probably easier to see. So with control, I now mouse over this. I put my mouse over this support. I now hold control, and then if you go around it, you can easily see on which tile it is. So that means I will have to place the footer here. So I'll place the footer here, and then let's reselect these colors. Then there are several pieces here that you can use to connect to the footer. So let's try to use the shortest one. As you can see, this one works perfectly. If your footer is a bit lower, you may need to use one of these longer pieces. But yeah, this is our first support connected. And then of course we can do the same on the other side. So we just make sure we move it upwards here. Then we go to the next. And we go to the next. And if you're not sure on which tile it is, you can use the virtual floor, and then you will see it's in this tile. Maybe a little bit tricky to see, so we should go to this tile. And messed it up. So yeah, so these supports are always tricky to do. But it can be highly rewarding if you manage. And you should always make sure the support you place has the right orientation, which may also be tricky. Alright, now we're at the correct spot. I will just place a footer there. I will remove this piece that I built. And alright, we put it like this. And if you don't really line up with the footer correctly, you can always just put an extra footer on top. And that usually also looks nice, especially if you put some bushes around it. Anyway, you can just continue the chain lift like this. Sometimes if you want to make it a little bit more tricky, you could also use one of these, which is a diagonal connector. So for example, it would probably end up here. And then you could try reusing that footer for some extra supports. So here you have one of these diagonal footers, You could place it, or diagonal support. You could place it here also on top of this footer. And then connect with diagonal pieces. This is a bit more tricky to do. And you may not always end up lining up perfectly, which I did not do here. But yeah, that's also a way you can do it. It's a bit more tricky and you need to be lined up a bit more specifically in certain way. But often in real life, coasters reuse footers for several different supports. But yeah, this is really tricky to do. If this first time you do it, I would just stick to doing these diagonal supports for the lift hill. And just repeat this a few times for the lift hill. If you don't have much space, you could just do one downwards and one to the side. Now, usually for the lift hill, there's just these diagonal sections, and for the rest of the track, there's usually just one part going downwards and one to the side. Now, one thing you should definitely do is make some flanges in your supports. Usually supports consist of several sections of pipe that are then joined together. So here I will just remove one random section. I will now take one of these. So it's like the normal steel support, but it has a flange in the middle. And I'll mouse over this support piece. I hold Control. So now I'm at the same height. I just go one to the side, and then I hold Shift and I move it downwards. And there you have it. Now I have a support with the flange piece here in the middle. It may be a little bit difficult to see now, but it's really there. I can do the same here. And there we now also have a flange piece. This just helps to make the coaster look a little bit more realistic. And it makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. You can also see here in the original supports there are also actually flanges in between the support pieces. You may have never noticed them, but they are there. Well, I cannot really tell you how much length you need to have between each flange, but usually for these long supports it usually looks nice to have several of these flanges. Now for corners, for turns, usually the supports go straight down and then to the side. So we probably want to use this piece here. Usually the supports are put to the inside of the sideward supports are put to the inside of the track usually. Now, let's put it like this. And we'll just put a footer here under here. Actually, I'm probably using the wrong piece. Oh yeah. As you can see, this piece actually centered on the edge. So here we also need a footer that's centered on the edge. So let's just select this footer so we reuse the colors. It's just faster than recoloring normally. And then we'll take this half tile footer. And then we'll take also this half tile support. And then and we just start building upwards once we have the correct. Yeah, this is the correct one. And now we can just start building upwards. Now there's a faster method to do this. So let's disable clearance checks. Then you can just hold Shift and spam this button. Now let's remove the original support here. And then we have to make the diagonal part, which is right here. And we should make a footer here. We can now just use the quarter tile piece. Always make sure you're building in the correct spot. Alright. And I think let's add one to the footer. And let's use this shortest piece, because I think it will work. And it works. So here we built another support. Well, you could build a few more of these here and right here. So that's also quite easy to do. So yeah, remember supports in turns are usually built inwards. No, I'm not gonna do the supports now for the entire track in this video, because it is quite time consuming. Now, here we have one of these, I think it's an Immelmann. Now right here the track is upside down, so we'll also want to make our supports upside down here. Well, connect to the top of the track, I mean. We'll want to use one of these here. And we'll want to build it right next to the track. So let's put it here near the top, right next to the track. The virtual floor is really useful here, I think. Now, if you look on the floor, you can see the tile where we are building this support. So let's put a footer there. So let's put a footer here, and then we'll just build upwards. Oh wait, let's use the correct piece. So we need a quarter tile support here. And let's enable clearance checks again, and oops, let's enable. Okay, for some reason the clearance checks were not actually disabled, but doesn't matter. We'll just build it like this. Alright. What I forgot to do here is actually make some flanges. Like this. You can also do it in the vertical parts. You can also do it here. Like that. And we'll also need a diagonal support here. Now here we actually end up into the ground. It's just because of how the land is shaped. So we could either just raise the land upwards or downwards here. I think I'll just raise the land upwards here. The landscape here is hilly anyway. And that just makes it easier for us to connect here. So we can probably, alright, let's do it like that. And we build a footer here, okay. Now, we actually need to still connect to the track. There's some other pieces we can use here. Here, let's use this. We could use this horizontal support, I think. No, maybe not. Let's just use this piece here, which is a right angle connector. By the way, if you're not sure if you're building on the correct tile, you can look at the ground, and then here you can see we're actually building on the correct tile. So let's put a right angle connector here. And let's just build a horizontal piece of track. And now it actually looks like the track is connected. You could try building another piece of this maybe. Probably it will look better with the half tile centered piece like this. But yeah, for supports there's really not one right way to do it. There's many pieces and there's many ways you can do it. Not all methods look as nice as each other, but you should just try and find something that works well for you. I actually don't really like the way this looks. So. Anyway, I'll just keep it like this. But yeah, this is a good way to do upside down connections. Now, loops also usually have support. Typically they're only connected here to the side. It's usually somewhere around halfway in the loop. Now, small loops, they're easy to do, but these large half loops, the problem they have is that they're drawn differently depending on from which angle you look. So if you make supports, they will always look like they're not touching from some angles. You will see this in typically in every park. If you look well, you will see that usually they're not connected from several angles. What I typically do is I will use these one of these connectors that's diagonal in two directions, and this can be a bit finicky, but just drag it upwards from here, and I will do the same on this side. This is obviously not the correct spot. As you can see, it's now far off from this angle. So let's try from a different position. But yeah, this may take some trial and error. I will just show you how I did it in the park where I did all these supports. Anyway, you get the idea now for how to make supports. It's just a repetition of these techniques. Like I said, there's not one right way to do this. When I do custom supports, I typically often look at pictures of real roller coasters which have supports, and that will usually help me decide on where to put mine and what works well and what doesn't. Anyway, I will now just go to the completed version of this park, and then I will give some more tips on doing custom supports. Alright, we're now in the completed version of this park. Now here you can see the supports that I did for the loops, and as you can see, what I did wrong is that I tried to put the diagonal section too high, and then it will just never connect to the coaster. So actually I put this diagonal piece much lower, and now you can see it does actually sort of connect from all angles. As you can see here, it doesn't really fully connect, and also here it's just a bit away from the loop. But yeah, I tried to get it as nice as I could in this park. Now, as you can see, indeed here for the chain lift, I just put these supports that all point to the side. Here at the bottom I just put little footers and small vertical pieces. Very easy to do. Here in this turn I put these supports with one vertical piece and a piece to the side. And here also I put one of these supports next to the loop. Also one vertical, one diagonal. Again, here at the bottom I used one of these diagonal pieces, but it doesn't really look nice from all angles. For example, here it actually looks like it's glitching through, but from this angle the focus will probably usually not be on this part anyway. Now, in some points where the top support was actually glitching through the track, or where it looked like it was not connecting, I actually just painted the top part of the support in the same color as the track, just to hide the fact that it was actually glitching through the track piece here. So yeah, that's also a little trick you can use. Here's another thing I like to do. When you put a track that actually passes through some of the supports that you made, sometimes I like to make a crossbar between the supports here, and then yeah, it looks like this part of the track actually also uses these supports. So yeah, to make a crossbar between the supports, let me just quickly take these colors. You can use one of these pieces. It's the horizontal piece with the little diagonal section on it. Let me see if I can manage to do this. So let's go on the same tile as this diagonal section. We're on the wrong tile. Alright. It's always a bit tricky to find out where exactly you're building. Okay. Yeah, it's now in the correct location. And then we can just build horizontal pieces next to it. And here we build one of these angled pieces. And then we have a crossbar here. So yeah, always make sure you're building in the correct spot. Alright. One place where there's actually a few places where making supports will lead to glitchy things. That's why I will just show you. For example, here in these steep pieces, usually you will end up with your supports either glitching through the track, or when looking from another angle they may actually not connect. So yeah, that's always a tricky place to place your supports. For example, from this angle they are connected, from this angle it's not connected, and from this angle they're actually glitching through. So yeah, here also I just painted the top part of the support in the same color as the track, just to make it less obvious that it's glitching through. So yeah, you'll usually get this at the steep parts and also at the horizontal to steep transitions. There's not much you can do about it. Maybe you can look at parks from other good players to see how they solved it. But yeah, usually if you look carefully you can see some place where the support glitched through. Now also in this part, for the diagonal section, I just used these centered footers and just centered straight track support pieces pointing upwards. I didn't bother with the diagonal sections here, but well, from this angle it looks okay, but if you look from this angle the supports are actually glitching through the track. So yeah, maybe it would have been different if I actually used the diagonal sections here, or maybe with Tile Inspector you could do something to hide this. But yeah, I just painted the top pieces also in the color of the track. So for example, for this piece, it's barely noticeable that it actually glitches through the track. Anyway, for the rest of the supports, yeah, you should just really use your imagination. Like I said, there's not one right way to do it. There's really tons of ways to do these supports. This is just how they are usually done and something that looks nice. But for example, if you now look at a ride like a steel curtain that's built in America, then that ride really has crazy supports, but I think it looks awesome. So yeah, really you should go wild with supports. Maybe you can use them to create some awesome sculptures or stuff like that. Just go wild. Now also one last thing I want to show you. Here there's a helix in the track, and helixes can also look great with supports. You can make the supports inwards. Here I decided to make the diagonal sections point outwards. I just used one of these connecting elements and just immediately connected them to a footer. Well, I did play a bit with the height of the footers and the height of this final piece here with a flange. There are several ones you can select depending on the height you need. But yeah, I think this worked out quite well. Helixes are fun to do. Anyway, this was the guide for sit-down coasters. For inverted coasters, the supports are done a little bit differently. But yeah, this is all for sit-downs. Alright, that was it for this episode. I hope this episode was useful for you. If you become a member of my Discord, you can actually download this park, and it may really help you as a reference if you want to do custom supports on one of your coasters. Alright, that was all, and I hope to see you again in the next episode. See you later.